So 6.4 and 6.5 and 6.6 all look at the different ways organizations can protect themselves so that the risks are mitigated and the impacts are hopefully, if not completely done away with, at least minimized as much as they can possibly be. So 6.4 is about the protection measures, physical and logical and policies that can be put into place by these organizations. So we looked at policies in a previous topic. And at that time, we said that these are documents that are written by somebody with responsibility within the organization. These policies are documents that are usually made available through staff training, through the company's intranet, and all staff are made aware of them. And they contain usually text information about whatever the policy might be on. Okay, so if it was a policy about how staff should dress, there will be a document that says, this is the kind of thing that staff should wear to look professional at work, and these are the kind of things that staff shouldn't wear because they're not considered professional or appropriate dress at work. And there will be a policy on the system somewhere that explains to staff, the company's policy around what kind of things you should wear for work. In our case, we're looking at a data security. Okay, so the policy would be written and regularly updated, and that would be put somewhere where people could find it, and it would cover things like staff access and their rights to information. Okay, so there will be information about your username and your password, and the importance of keeping those things safe, and what information you can access and what information possibly you shouldn't have access to. So what are your rights around access to information? There'll also be something about the staff and their responsibilities, their personal responsibility for the security of the information that they use on a daily basis. Okay, so as a member of staff in a school or college environment, if you have to use a computer within the classroom, you would be expected to not leave that computer logged on when you left the room so that other people can get access to the systems. Other students shouldn't be allowed to see other students' personal, private, medical type information. So there'll be something in the policy that says, that computer must be locked, or it must be logged off, or it must be made secure in some way. There will be something in the policy about recovering from a disaster. So if there's a flood or a fire, a hurricane, or something happens, some terrible disaster, the system fails completely for some reason, what are the steps we take to ensure we can recover from that? And what does that look like? And what do we do first? And what we do second? And who do we talk to? And who's responsible for what? There'll also be something in the policy that looks at, well, what are the risks around the security? What things do we need to think about? What exactly are the problem areas? What's the area within the organization that perhaps poses the highest risk or the lowest risk? And how do we go about making sure that those risks are dealt with? So there'll be some kind of assessment of where the problem areas might be. You might also have something in your policy about how effective the measures you have in place are likely to be. And then you can look for the weaknesses, and you can obviously try and plug those gaps. There'll be something perhaps about, as we mentioned before, when members of staff start new jobs or at intervals throughout their the job within the environment they work in, there will be refreshers, there will be training. So staff know and understand how to handle information and keep it safe and keep it secure, and what they need to do and how they need to do it And if the law has changed or if the policy's changed, staff will need to be then retrained. So here's a list of the kind of things that you would expect to see in a data protection policy. Okay, so these 9 topics are kind of standard contents of a data protection policy within an organization, and they cover data privacy, passwords, use of the internet, safe use of email, what is and what isn't appropriate internet and email usage, how you handle company-owned devices and what you can and can't do on a company-owned device. Devices that you might bring to work yourself, sometimes referred to as BYOD, or bring your own device. So if you bring your own tablet or laptop or smartphone into the college, what can you and what can you not do on those devices? There might be something about your use of social media, and there might be something about bullying or trolling or bringing the organization into disrepute on social media. There'll be something about licensing and what you are and are not allowed to use on your computer systems, and that will be surrounding, what's copyrighted and what have you got licenses for. And if there is an incident, if there is a security problem, how do you report that? What's the mechanism in place to allow you to make that report, and who's then responsible, and what steps would happen next, and who would kind of be involved in that whole process. So the main thing really for us to think about here is, the paperwork and the procedures and the policies that the company or the organization would have in place, so that everybody who works within that organization knows what the data protection issues are and what they need to do if something was to happen. So here's the kind of question you would get on this. So again, we're told that there's been a breach. We don't know what the breach is, but we know that there's been a problem. And the company is now following on from that, looking at its policies and procedures to see, is there anything that they perhaps need to update to stop this from happening again in the future. So the question asks you to explain the importance of creating a policy so that staff are trained to handle information properly. Okay, so if we think about the context of the question, we know there's been a breach. We know they're reviewing policies and procedures, and we are being asked, to think about the policy that might exist, the section of the policy that would deal with the training of staff and how they go about handling information, because we don't want this thing to happen again. So here are some of the things that the exam board suggest were good answers to this question. So why do we train staff, and why do we create a policy for staff training? Well, so that all staff are aware of the Data Protection Act and the Computer Misuse Act, any other legislation that they need to be aware of, so they know what the laws are surrounding these issues, because we don't want anybody breaking the law. We don't want big fines, we don't want court cases, we don't want people getting fired and so on. Okay, we don't want people's data where it ought not to be. Secondly, to make sure that all the staff know the procedures and the policies that are in place for handling this information. To ensure that the policy is written down somewhere. Why? Well, so we can refer to it. So if there's a problem, we can point people to the policy and we can clearly say to them, look, this section deals with this. Please make yourself aware of it. And, you've got no excuse then if there's an issue later on. You were clearly told what the situation was, what you could and couldn't do. Okay, and any other reasonable and valid suggestion. Okay, so it could be around the use of memory sticks or your own devices, and and the safety and security of those things in terms of the confidentiality of the information contained upon them. Now, this particular document gives us a little bit more from the examiner. So we can see here that the focus of Part C was on the importance of having a staff training policy. Responses to this question were very generic, and failed to demonstrate any depth of understanding. Okay, so the examiner's clearly suggesting that when students sat this exam, many of them were not really sure about what the policy was or what the procedures were or why there was an important need, to maybe have this policy and this staff training. And students didn't really understand the purpose of the policy or how it helped them to, uphold their legal obligations. So basically, the message from the examiner here is that you need to be familiar what policies are and the kind of things that are likely to be in policies. And your answers, again, as with the previous question, need to specifically relate to the context within the question.